Someday I'm going to have fancy schmancy production facilities, but today is not that day yet. Thanks for joining me for today's AM status hearing. Today I want to investigate the idea of the hips in balancing. We've been doing some standing postures with the chair, and I wanted to make sure that we did some balancing postures using the chair this week so that you could get some sense of what different muscles you're using and how you stop using them when you're preoccupied with the balance, when we're just thinking, I can't fall over, I can't fall over. We get very narrow-minded, very one-track, very focused on things that may not necessarily be of the most assistance. Okay. So we'll start today standing up as we did yesterday. And I'm turning sideways so that you can see the belly expanding and relaxing with the breath. So we'll start with the diaphragmatic breathing as we always do. And as I'm breathing, I'm almost thinking about using the belly. I don't really have to do anything. If I start to push the belly out, breath begins to pull into my body due to the vacuum that's created by the diaphragm movement. So instead of, I'm just going to feel into my belly. Notice how my belly sort of determines what's going to happen next. So right now, rather than pushing and pulling and pushing and pulling, I'm just letting the belly expand. It's doing it by itself. And at some point, I can't take in any more breath. And if I wait, and the belly begins to contract, the diaphragm begins to push down, I expel air and take in more. In fact, it's carbon dioxide that stimulates that desire for more air. Carbon dioxide is a waste product. I talk about waste products all the time in this class. So a waste product from breathing. It's a byproduct of breathing. So we get it out. We get that particular waste product out by simply breathing. So as I continue to breathe, I'm going to turn my attention to my feet. Now, if you wear shoes all day, you get a little benefit from the shoes in that there's some stability on the edges of the shoe. When we're not wearing shoes, it's a lot easier for our feet to fall, for our ankles to collapse, our knees, our hips. I really recommend that you spend some time each day in bare feet. And I don't recommend that you spend all day in bare feet because that also leads to bad habits. All right, you get too much, you get not enough. So everything in balance. But spending some time in bare feet helps you to feel the outline, the edges of your foot, and it's not constricted by a shoe. You can feel the edge of your foot simply by turning your attention to it. So feel the outside edge of the front of your foot. Feel the outside edge of the back of your foot, of your feet, both feet. Feel the inside edges of both feet. And feel the inside edges of the back. All right, so we started with the front of the outside. We went to the back of the outside. We went to the front of the inside. Now we're going to the back of the inside of the foot. So you have 4 points there that you can press into. And then if you think about the the five toes and their contact with the ground and their ability to either add pressure or take it away is assisting you with your balance simply standing. So I'm going to shift my weight side to side and feel how if I shift my weight over to the right, there's more weight in my right foot. Shift my weight over to the left, more weight in the left. And right and left. Now exaggerate it a little bit and add a hip there. And as you add the hip, can you put a little more weight into the foot? I'm finding on my right side, I'm avoiding putting a little more weight into the hip. I'm arching my back a little bit so I don't put as much weight into the hip. And it's things like this that I find fascinating because I've complained a lot about my right knee and just finding out more about how the body moves and what our personal movement patterns are is very useful in managing physical pain, for example. So I'm finding I'm wanting to arch my back as I go, well, to my right, your left. But notice how the hips, if I move my hips, sort of shift my core, and now it's a lot heavier in one direction than it is in the other. Now, my body knows instinctively not to just completely let go in this hip, because if I did, we would just topple over. So this hip has to engage in order to balance out. Now, it doesn't have to engage as much because I don't want to evenly distribute the weight, but it has to engage. So as we come onto the right foot, let's again stay on the right foot, shift the hip into the right foot. Keep that left foot on the floor, but lift the heel. Push the feet apart. Push the inner thighs apart. Are you feeling an engagement in the backs of the hips? The hips, we always say, oh, the hips are our basic, or they're our center of gravity, but nobody ever thinks about those hips when we start to balance. Everyone gets very concerned with the feet and the ankles and the shoulders. Let's go to those hips now. If I'm pushing my feet apart, I have to engage my hips. Now, if I lift this foot up, my first instinct is to, oh my gosh, I'm balancing, and let go. What happens if I keep engaging that hip? I'm imagining now that I'm pushing my inner thighs apart. And when I do that, can you push your shoulders apart? And maybe feel how that helps you stabilize a balance. On your next exhalation, we're going to step down onto the left foot very mindfully. Shift the weight over. Oh, where is it even? For me, it's right here. Now I'm shifting the weight over to the left. And I'm going to shift my hip over. And then I'm going to leave that right foot on the floor, separate the inner thighs, separate the feet. Imagine that I'm pushing them apart. Again, my purpose in doing this is to engage the hips, the outer hips and the inner hips. So stay focused on those hips, stay focused on that engagement. And what happens if I lift the foot? Can I stay focused on the engagement? I'm also finding that if I kind of push out through the outsides of my heels, that helps me engage the backs of my hips. On your next inhalation, we'll go ahead and step down. Shift very slowly onto the opposite side. Now, go into your breath. Turn your attention to your belly. We talked about that idea of drawing the breath in and exhaling as the belly contracts. And we said that the belly will do that by itself. So we're going to go back into our balance on the right side. We're going to change things up a little bit by lifting that left knee forward. Again, can I keep my hips engaged? And for me, I'm kind of pushing out with the outside edges of my heels, and I'm kind of pushing down and in with my big toes. Now, how can I help myself out? Well, I can go into my breath. If I widen my belly on the inhalation and I let the breath just do, or I let the body just do the breathing. And if I feel wiggly, I can go back to my hips. I can go back to that idea of pushing into my big toe, pushing into the outsides of my heels. I can go back to the idea of widening the belly. And then the next inhalation, we'll gently step down. So now we've talked about some things that you can focus on as you're balancing. So let's move to the opposite side, coming onto the left foot, lifting up in my right toes. And once again, something I should have mentioned before, there's so many resources that I can use to help me with my balance. Remember the four corners of the feet? So 4 corners of the feet, and then you've got 5 little balancing points here. So play with the toes. See how that feels. And here we go again. This time we're going to lift the knee. So I'm taking it up a little higher. And we can go right to the breath if we want. Remember, when you breathe, we're expanding through the back, through the sides, through the belly. So fill up the entire circumference. Make a barrel with your hips and belly. Engage your hips. Outer heel, inner toe. Engage your toes. And inhaling, gently step down and step side to side. Now I'm going to use the chair for this next one. And if you have something to hold on to, I would encourage you to try holding on now for this next one. And just notice how it changes what you're doing and where your focus is. So we're shifting over to the right again, engaging the hips, pushing a little bit. Take a breath into the entire core. Press into all 5 toes. And now as we lift, we're going to bring that left hand underneath the left knee. And I would suggest just tap if you want. If you don't want to hang on, just tap. But when you begin to feel wiggly, and you might even want to extend that leg. When I begin to feel wiggly, what's going on? Well, I just let go of my hips. Right? This extended leg, this is tricky. I really have to focus on pushing down in my toes and pushing down in my outer heels. And I've always had a problem talking and balancing at the same time, so I'm also forgetting to breathe fully. Got to breathe into my back. If I just breathe into my stomach, I'm going to expand my stomach forward and nothing's going to balance me backward. Nice deep breath in. As we exhale, if your leg is extended, go ahead and bend that knee. Step to the opposite side. I'm going to move my chair. Be mindful here, sitting into that foot. Engage the hips, engage the belly. Use the toes and feet. Again, tap your chair if you want to. When I begin to wiggle, though, if my hand's on the chair and I'm not worried about falling out, now I can really feel into what am I doing and what am I not doing. So as I stand here longer, am feeling myself, I'm giving up in my right and what you see on the left, giving up in that hip. It doesn't want to keep engaging. Now, what do I do here? Well, I'm just going to use the chair and see if I can keep engaging my hip. Really focus, pressing into my outer heels, pressing into my big toe. Maybe extending that leg. Oh boy, now I really don't want to focus. Now I feel myself starting to arch my back. So now what I'm going to do is shift. I'm going to turn my tailbone down to the floor. Breathe into my belly. Breathe into the back as well, so that I'm not going to fall forward. Take a nice deep breath in. As I exhale, I'll gently bend the knee and step side to side. All right, so what was happening there? Hoo-hoo. Well, first of all, this right hip was a little weak and it wanted to arch and tilt, bend and snap. And I was having a hard time just holding it straight. So that became number one for me. Number two, holding it straight means that I have to stretch through the front of this thigh. And the longer I tried to hold it straight, the more fatigued this thigh became. So my thigh, it's starting to try to shorten a little bit because it's getting tired. And so then I had to focus on this idea of there being pain and not panicking. So there's a lot going on. And when we just, I got to try to focus, stay on one foot. And the whole purpose of this is for me to balance. There's a lot more going on that you can think about. And I think that a lot of that will help you balance, number one. But number two, when you begin to identify all the factors at play, you become better at walking, you become better at standing, etc. So I'm going to move the chair. I'm going to come into one last balancing posture here. And this is what we call a warrior three. Now, I like to approach warrior three a little different. I approach everything a little different. You figure that out by now, right? I'm going to step forward on my left, your right. So I'm just going to call this my right foot. And as I step forward, I'm not going to lift that back foot yet. I'm pushing into that toe. So I'm pushing backward with my left foot, and I'm bearing down with my right foot. And now I'm going to turn my attention to the outsides of my heels, press down there, turn my attention to the big toe and press down there. Now I'm feeling my hips. I could stay right here. I'm also seeing myself beginning to arch, so I have got to straighten out. And from here, I like to flatten out the arms. And as we come into warrior two is just an extended leg behind. But what tends to happen in warrior two, and you'll see it with me too, my left knee is starting to turn toward you. Now, when I do that, I'm completely disregarding, completely disengaging my outer hip, which we figured out was what was helping us balance. Now, I can use the chair if I want to. I could just use one arm. I could use no arms. Aside from my just having difficulty talking and balancing at the same time, I will say that I like to use the chair because, once again, I can feel where my weaknesses are. I don't fall out of the posture before I begin to learn about my weaknesses because I'm holding on. Take a nice deep breath in as we exhale, coming back to standing and stepping side to side. All right, so what was going on for me? What was going on for me is this right hip was trying to hold that leg back. And I told you before when I was trying to balance on the right hip, it was getting tired and I was having difficulty engaging my outer hips. Well, I started to turn my knee, as I said, and so I had to re-engage it. It's already pretty tired. So what was I finding again here? Well, again, I got some pain going on. I've got some weakness in my right hip. And maybe what I do is turn my attention there. Well, I'm not going to turn my attention there. It hurts. I turn my attention there. I hold on to my chair and I investigate that a little bit. Again, what I found when we were balancing was that this guy had to straighten out in order to tuck my back so I wouldn't favor one side over the other. And now my quadricep is tight, doesn't want to. And I can't just jam it down his throat. Straighten out anyway. Just do it. It's not. That's the bottom line. So I had to breathe into that Can you lengthen that quadricep? Or breathe into the outside of the heel. What happens if you just press a little bit more? And this goes back to managing pain and this idea that, again, the purpose isn't to suck it up and bear it and grin. The purpose is to learn about it, to understand that there's stress there, and to begin to manage that stress. Acknowledge it. It's there. Maybe I won't take it away right now. Maybe I'll put up with it for a few more seconds, but I'll stay with it, just like a mother and a scared child. I'll stay with it until it's over. So last posture here on the right foot. And I'm going to turn that left leg backward. And I'm pushing into that toe. And the goal or the purpose of that now is I can sort of push into that toe and I can feel my front foot resisting. So now I'm engaging those hips. Again, I like to straighten out my arms, maybe rotate your palms forward. I find that this helps you to lengthen through your fingers a little more. And on your next inhalation, we can step forward. You could stay right here, or you could begin to bend forward. I'm going to stay very conservative here because I already know that hip is tired. I know that both hips are tired. We've been doing a lot of balancing. And I'm beginning to lose control, lose contact with the outside of my heel. It's harder and harder for me to engage the outsides of my hips. Again, it hurts. Breathe into it. It's okay. Stay with it. Stay with it. And as you inhale, stay with it again. Press into your big toe. If you're ready, we'll come back to a standing position. And take a few breaths and feel into the hips. I don't know about you, but my hips are really tired. Now, there's some other things But if you were walking a lot yesterday, your hips might be tired. If you stood all day, your hips might be tired. Know that all of these things affect your ability to balance, and your balance affects your ability to move during your day. So oftentimes we get up and we're tired or we don't feel like moving around. It's not always you being lazy. If you're tired, you're tired. And part of learning more about this is learning to recognize, okay, what's going on? Maybe I need to rest. Maybe I just need to breathe, wake myself up a little bit. Let's go ahead and come down into final Shavasana. I'm going to adjust my camera a little bit. Allow the body to relax. And I would suggest, if your hips don't come to mind, first and foremost, see what happens when you turn your attention to your hips. I've talked about Harry Potter walking through Hogwarts hallways and kind of imagining that I'm in my body and there's a hallway that's going through all these muscles. I'm kind of walking through as I walk down my leg and into my calf, my foot. Maybe I can turn around and walk back up. Maybe I walk back up into my butt cheek, my left butt cheek. Walk on over to my right butt cheek so that I'm feeling these muscles from the inside. And noticing they're tired. And noticing that there's a whole lot of other factors at play. I just awoke. Maybe not quite 100% yet. My feet just awoke. My feet were trying to help, but they may not be 100%. So they're just sort of waking up. So was everything perfect? Absolutely not. Was I able to do the posture by myself? Well, I could have. But using the chair gave me an opportunity to figure out something new. And I really want to emphasize that I am doing this with you. I'm not teaching as much as I am experiencing and just reflecting back what my experience is. So I learned that when my hip gets tired, I arch my back. And then my quadricep muscle starts to shorten. And if you think about this, the quadricep muscle runs from the knee roughly to the hip. If this shortens, of course, it's going to pull my back. It's going to, well, you can't see with the black, but it's going to pull my back into an arch. And of course, that's going to throw me off balance. So is it that I can't balance or that I'm weak? No, I have a tight thigh, tight quadricep muscle. What do I do about that? That's another class already. Feeling into it, being compassionate. So turn your attention to whatever bodily sensation is foremost in your mind. And if it's pain, What happens if you look at the pain like a little child, as if that pain is a little child and you are you? You know, we see all those signs, live, love, laugh, and kindness counts, and it's easy to dismiss them because I read them and I think, kindness counts, go on with my day. But it helps me. It makes me have a better life. It makes me have a better day. And I'll go right here as an example. Being kind to myself, looking at what's in front of me, acknowledging what's in front of me. You're not weak. You're not clumsy. You have tight muscles, and those muscles are fatigued. Now, if those muscles are fatigued and I'm looking at it like a little kid, like a 4-year-old, they're calling out, they're starting to cry. I want this, I want this, I don't like this, I don't like this. Am I going to slap the kid? I mean, how do I respond to that? Try to calm down. I respond with kindness. Try to calm down. Try to soften your body. I'm here with you. I'm going to stay with you. I know this is hard right now. And I'm going to share the burden with you. And soon it will be over. And when I was practicing those balances, that attitude is not reflexive yet. It really requires me to be present. But how much more productive is kindness in that situation versus violence? Shut up. Versus, I don't care if you're tired. Keep working at it. Do it more. I want you to stay in. I do not want you to, you will not fall down. It doesn't, even when I talk to myself like that, it doesn't encourage me to want to give, to want to enter the struggle. I'm still all by myself and there are people being mean to me. And it's a lonely, awful place to be. Even physically, we do that to ourselves. And how much more kindness positively affects that ability to even do something like balance on one leg. We're here together. We can't stop yet, but we will. And carrying out another second or two, here we are right now. It's me and you, as if I'm talking to my leg, but here we are now. This is our opportunity. Let's not push on to the next thing. Let's just take a moment. We've reached the end of our time. You can bring yourself back from Shavasana in whatever way feels comfortable for you. For whatever reason, I always just have to kind of move the hips, pull the arms apart. I kind of hang onto my hands, pull the arms apart. That feels good for me. Rotate the head. We'll gently roll to one side. And you'll feel the blood kind of sinking toward the floor. And that's all we're trying to do. We just want that blood to move. Once it moves, we know it's moving. And now when we stand up, we know it's not going to pull in extremities. It's going to continue to move where it's needed. So I hope this was useful for you today. Something a little bit different. But again, the goal here with status hearing is to investigate into these things, investigate into the body, and use that as a tool for learning more about the mind and the heart. So thanks for joining me today. I hope we'll see you again tomorrow, 7 a.m. for AM Status Hearing. Have a wonderful day. Namaste.